This is the Environmental Protection Commission, regular meeting, Wednesday, August 3, 2022. The first piece of new business is EPC 17, 2022, 35 Hamilton Lane, D. Morgan and E. Morgan, to construct an expanded pool patio, underground propane tank drainage, and other related features proximate to the wetlands and watercourses. The property lies on the north side of Hamilton Lane, approximately 130 feet west of Ironwood Lane, and it's identified as map number 10, lot number 34. The zone is R1, and it is approximately 1.0087 acres. Do we have the, Rick?
Mr. Chairman, that's an accurate description of the application. For those of you that have been out to the site, staff has been out to the site as well and is in the process of generating a list of information that would bring the application into closer compliance with what it feels would be a good application for the board to consider. There is a small intermittent watercourse that's along one side of the property. There's wetlands that are a fringe along that watercourse, kind of expands out into a lawn area at the rear of the property, and then along the right side of the property as well. Lawn in the back, wooded wetland in the side. The property has been subject to a prior EPC application, which they put additions on. That is substantially constructed at this point. However, the applicant seeks to expand upon, they've filed a new application for expand a patio area to install a propane tank, install drainage to more adequately mitigate the impacts on the site. So again, staff is generating a list of information. I'm open to any observations you may have if you have visited the site, and we can certainly add it to that list. Again, it's for acceptance tonight, meaning we're starting the time clock, statutory time clock, and a determination if they feel the board feels that there's a public hearing warranted for the application. And if not, we'll move forward with the request for information and look forward to a full presentation at next month's meeting.
Does any commission member have comment or questions? Bill?
Is the patio, it looks like it's almost done when I was out there. Did they, is there an addition to that patio? Because the patio is like, they're missing like
Yes.
5 pieces of slate.
Well,
that's about it.
Portions of it were being constructed, and it was inconsistent with what was shown on the original permit.
Okay.
They were asked to stop. They generally had stopped where they were. If you noticed alongside the pool and around the side of what had the bluestone is concrete that had been poured, so the surface has not been installed on it. The final grading has not been done. The tank has, of course, not been installed. And under the original application, there was a very small infiltrator unit that was installed in the back. And as you can see on the plans, in order to more adequately mitigate the proposal and adjust the impacts, the engineer has come back and has resized it, and they have to put a greater number of.
Yeah, and that's fine. It just
Yep.
seems like they may have gone ahead before they got a permission.
They went ahead on a lot of it.
Yeah,
But
matter of
when,
fact, I don't
during our
remember
inspections,
did those additions come before us too?
the additions came before
Oh,
us.
it must have been before my time, 'cause I don't remember when those.
Yeah, it was.
All right,
I have to-
all right, well, that's just case in point, we'd like to get that ahead of time, obviously. The other part that I was picked up when I was looking around the other side is that the silt fencing is basically useless. Everything's been going right underneath it off of the driveway. And there's a large amount of debris in that stream that, I don't know if it got pushed in there or water. It looks like it got pushed in there, but it's like a big clog right where the driveway meets the garage doors. And so that's all, that is about this high above the ground, so anything's going straight through it. So they need to beef that up, clean that out, if you don't mind talking to them about
Yeah,
that.
that was included in the
Okay.
list. Yep,
You saw that already?
yes.
Well, you didn't have, you could have told me.
I want to
wouldn't
listen
need
to you.
You wanted to hear me talk about it. Okay, good man. That's it. And then maybe they could put a little more, my usual barrier plantings along the grass area that goes directly to that spot, along that whole, it's the left side, I guess that's the west side, would be helpful too. But that's all I have.
Anybody else?
Yeah, so I was just wondering, why did they only choose the one side to do plantings? Is there any reasoning?
There wasn't, in the original proposal, there wasn't a lot in terms of planting along the water course. During our inspections, so they had expanded beyond the limits. They were going to put the tank in the rear left-hand corner in the floodplain. There was a ton more debris that was in there, so they have cleaned a lot of it up. The silt fence I saw the other day was in disrepair, but I believe it's the same thing, is that the planting, to some degree, should be expanded on the left-hand side as well to stabilize that slope. There's some extraneous piping, there's, again, some extraneous debris that's in the channel, so that is included, and we will ask them to react to that too.
Rick, on the right side, there's like skunk cabbage and things like that, so, which would indicate a wetland. Right, and to my, there seems to be a lot of, there's like a wood pile, or actually two wood piles there that look like, you know, that wood wouldn't burn if it was put into a steel furnace, okay? I mean, that would just, and there's like an old fence there, you know, that sort of needs to be cleaned up there, so.
Yeah, there's a lot of remnant debris on that side too.
Yeah,
We'd
okay,
ask
no,
them to-
I'm sure you've got that, but I just wanted to,
Absolutely.
but then when I went there was a landscaping firm that was pulling some vine down over, you know, taking away some invasive there, so, which I thought was a good start anyway, so. So anyway, okay, so that'll be, so the question is, do we need does this meet the criteria for a public hearing?
My sense is, I do have a question for Rick on the propane tank. It's clearly, put into the wetlands area. I wonder if that's best practice, particularly if it's going to be a metallic tank of some sort and that soil is wet if it is. Whether, I'm not strong on it, but there's so many other places that could be.
I agree with you. One of the items I had on my list is looking at an alternative that maybe at least gives us a little bit of a setback to the wetlands and the floodplain in that particular area.
Yep.
And then, just in response to your question, I mean, they can be constructed in such a manner that, one, you have to construct it so that it's not sitting in standing water.
Right.
And two, there's also things that they can do to, like a rust
Rust
preventative. They put the
inhibitors
magnesium
or charred
bags
over
on
or
them and
something like that.
anoids or whatever they call them.
Okay. And, my sense is, just a general sense is the application doesn't have a significant impact. So, my own personal opinion, subject to vote, is probably does not need a public hearing, but that's just my opinion.
Are there any?
I just have kind of like a quick question. So the directly connected impervious area tracking form, that was signed and dated January of 2021. So as I understand, this application is for an expanded patio. Presumably the pool and all of that was a prior application. So wouldn't this form not really be relevant to this particular?
They included the tracking form, but of course it would have to, and I think that was one of the things that came out of the DPW review, is that would of course have to be amended.
Right.
To be reflective.
Because the impervious surface would increase.
So, and I think Mr. Ostafine pointed out, they have to
Oh.
supply an applicable tracking
Right,
form as well.
okay. Yeah, I just noticed that it was old and it didn't really account for what they're asking for in this application.
Anybody else have anything? Questions, comments? Carolyn, what's your opinion? Should this be a public hearing or not?
I don't think so. I think that some of the issues that we have can be dealt with, so I would think not. but I'm not,
Yeah, I agree.
yeah.
Okay. Well, okay, so there'll be no public hearing on that. That's the consensus. Anybody else have anything on this application? Okay. Moving on, EPC 18-2022, 358 Hollow Tree Ridge Road, S. Miller and K. Miller to construct an in-ground pool house, terrace, fence, equipment pad, and other related features proximate to wetlands and watercourses. The property lies along the east side of Hollow Tree Ridge Road, the access of which lies approximately 460 feet north of Nutmeg Lane and is identified as map number 9, lot number 121B. The zone is R2 and it is approximately 2.1464 acres.
Mr. Chairman, the application is to construct a pool and a pool house and drainage to mitigate impacts and to do some landscape improvements to not only mitigate impacts of the development, but also to enhance the overall conservation values of the property. Staff has been out there. Staff has generated a baseline list of information necessary to move forward with the application. If you have been there, there's kind of an open lawn area that is wetlands along the, let's see, I think that's the eastern side of the property. There's kind of a scrubby wetland to the south and more of a lawn space to the west. The pertinent issues with this are going to have to be are associated with the grading, the elevations, the drainage impact, the sediment erosion control, a good accurate depiction of the underground features that are there to ensure there's no conflicts, and again, assessing the mitigation proposal. If you note in the package, on a preliminary basis, Alexandra Mack prepared a landscape plan. I would recommend certain tweaks to that plan to make it a greater value for the wetland and property. Again, that letter's been generated. DPW has provided some preliminary comments, has asked them to ask their design engineer to address. And if you've been there and you have anything that you wish to be included, happy to do so. Again, we're starting the time clock on this, the statutory time clock. We'll ask the applicant to react to the list of information that we together get out to them. And looking forward to a presentation at next month's meeting. And again, decide if you think it warrants a public hearing. In staff's opinion, it does not. There's no direct inland wetland impacts with this, but the encroachments are limited to the upland review area, with the exception of perhaps some landscaping and other mitigative measures in the wetland itself.
Somebody go first.
Can I just point something out? So this is sort of an administrative question. I noticed that the soil and wetlands report was from 2015. I mean, I'm sure the topography and that doesn't really change, but I mean, just from an administrative standpoint, how often, like how long is a report good for? And it also refers to the address being in New Canaan, not in Darien. That's just.
Well, typically, the wetland soils reports are not going to change that significantly unless something was done out there to alter the composition of the soil. So for instance, if it was, ridgeberry soils at the rear of the property, and all of a sudden you see a ton of fill, yes, it would absolutely change.
So this
if it's
is still good then?
Well, one of the things that staff does is go out and look at it and says, well, here's the soils report. Does anything look like it's significantly changed in terms of topography or whatever? It's just, a broad brush kind of verification of that. And, if it says New Canaan, I mean, there's a Scribner's error, so.
So there's really no expiration, no
Yeah.
matter how many years
It's not like
on
milk.
those, as long as you don't see anything different, right?
Right.
Okay.
Okay, good question. I was
Yeah.
wondering that myself.
Yeah, I just didn't know how long they were good for,
Okay.
since it was, 7 years old.
Peter?
Yeah, I don't have any real observations on this, except I would say parallels a little bit the first application. I'm not personally seeing a public hearing on this one, and I look forward to the presentation next month.
Lauren?
I don't know anything about that, so.
All right.
Okay.
I got a few items. It was not flagged, you know, and it's a big piece of property, and I'm guessing, you know, we have an idea what's wet, what's not, but it, you know, it says flagged, it should be flagged, so I have no idea exactly where the wetlands were flagged. So that was my first concern.
So, Rick, can you get them to flag it for next
Well, the
meeting?
Oh, sorry.
Because it says it's flagged here on the thing.
I couldn't, I didn't, unless I missed it. Did you see any flags out there showing the wetlands?
Well, no, they were done 7 years ago, so you took them off a map, and
Oh, really?
they're reflected, and they're reflected on the plan.
That's what
Where were you
expired.
Yeah,
so
right,
that
right.
expired.
The flags expire.
What those flag things? All right, so that'd be one. The second was, there's an area if you're out there that looks like it was cut, some trees were cut down, stumps were gone, and that's probably where they're gonna put the pool in that area. And so, you know, they're allowed to do that, I'm sure, but it would have been nice to kind of see all that, what was there before they went ahead and did that, getting ready for this pool setup. Again, nothing probably we can do.
It looked
but-
like they were freshly cut down?
Well, it was an area that had been worked over, and it's very
Okay.
close to where this is. So again, I can't be sure what was like before, but it's suspect, you know. It would have been nice to see all that. It would have been nice to see the trees that they had to remove out of there, so we at least got the full picture. The other item is, I would hope that because they're intruding into the 50-foot area, that we're gonna have some less lawn somewhere. That, you know, we're giving them a spot, but where can they make sure they don't, or more importantly, you put a pool and don't start adding lawn while around this pool. So I think that's something we should get, is that they stop, that doesn't happen, and maybe we get a little more back of what the lawn is there in the wetland area or close to the wetland area. And I think that was all I had. Oh, the critter fence, which I learned from Rick last time. I love that idea, where when you put a fence into a wetland area, especially very wet, that you have a little bit of gap. The deer aren't gonna go under there, so,
Right.
but allows the small stuff, turtles and other things to go through. So I think that's a great takeaway from last time, that we should start using in a spot like that. It's not the whole fence, it's just one section, small sections of it. I don't know, what do we call it? The critter, escape path or something like that, or highway?
Okay, okay.
We'll have to come up with something.
You know, some of the things that, you hit it right on that, some of the things that we have asked for is looking at the modification of the landscape plan. A little bit more attention to the removal of non-native invasives, defined limits of lawn and landscape, modification of plan and provide for the restoration of some number of conservation value trees in the space that has been modified, and a necessary demarcation feature. We're also looking for clarification
That'd be great.
on the location of the fence, because if you notice on some of the plans, they show it as being very tight to the pole, and on another set of plans, they show it going all the way back to the rear property line.
Got it.
So,
Great.
they'll have to make some
Yeah,
critical
that'd be helpful.
decisions.
Great, thanks.
Okay, so, I don't think it meets the criteria for a public hearing. Okay. Moving on, EPC 19-2022, 34 LaForge Road, 34 LaForge LLC. Construction of a new single-family dwelling, drive, drainage, deck, and other related features proximate to an intermittent watercourse. The property lies along the south side of LaForge Road, just west of the Relihan Road, and is identified as map number 44, lot number 19. The zone is an R1/5, and it is approximately 0.3746 acres. Rick?
Mr. Chairman, the application is to demolish the existing single-family dwelling that's on the property, and to construct a new single-family dwelling in its place. Associated with that reconstruction is necessary drainage to mitigate potential drainage and potential drainage and water quality impacts. And the regulated areas themselves include an intermittent watercourse that parallels the south property boundary. There's a number of pretty large trees on the property. Staff has been out to the site, has generated a fairly a limited list of additional information that is necessary to move forward with the full and proper review of the application. They've provided a erosion control plan. We're looking for some tweaks on that as well, some tree protection, and again, evaluating the mitigation proposal that they have proposed. And again, look forward to whatever comments you may have. The letter has been composed. It's already been referred to Public Works, and they have come up with some information they need to see to ensure that that this full and proper function of this, the systems they propose. And again, look forward to the full presentation at next week's meeting, just a mere three or so weeks away.
Mm-hmm.
I think for now that's it, and then decided to believe that a public hearing is warranted on the application.
Is there
Again,
gonna be
no
a basement?
wetland impacts.
Is there going to be a basement?
Yes.
There is, according to the application. Is there a
Yes.
basement currently? Because I know a lot of the homes over there have crawl spaces.
Mm-hmm.
I do not know. The applicant says it does.
have a full basement.
The currently.
This height,
This height?
yes.
That's pretty high.
No, because one of the questions I have, and it's not to be answered now, so I'm just throwing it out there because it will be my question.
Please.
Okay, is water in the basement? Okay, do you currently have sump pumps? What happened during the two storms in last
September.
last September? Did you, like many other people in Darien, have water issues? A perk test just to make sure, perk test and relevant things to make sure that, because I don't want sump pumps running, 7 by 24. Okay, and because you're discharging water and it creates other issues. So it's a hang up of mine. And so I just want to make sure. That would be one of my comments to do it. Is there anybody else that would like to?
Oh, you echoed exactly my concern. And again, I know there are a lot of crawl spaces over there. Good you have a basement. That's a good indicator that
That'll work.
that it works. But that would be exactly my concern is perk test or what's the water table, and will we be just pumping that water back into the wetlands? A lot of the land over there is it's a beautiful block, beautiful neighborhood. A lot of the land is very squishy over there.
Mhm.
Yeah, I thought I saw what could be like a rain garden and some plants that, could maybe be saved. Are they looking at trying to save some of those plants and trees?
I did not see a rain garden out there, but there are some pretty substantial trees, and we asked them to do an evaluation of trees to see what can be saved and what shouldn't be saved. There's also some trees that they may be showing on here that are going to be saved that probably don't warrant or merit being saved. They have come up with a landscape proposal for a portion of this. I think, though, that there's some management and maybe some additional planting that could be tweaked along portions of the water course as well, and we've asked them to do that.
I also noticed, is the stone retaining wall, does that stay or go? I couldn't tell by the drawings, is it like the purpose is for retention, right?
I don't know if there's a retaining wall.
Okay, I took a picture of it. This one? See? It's like on the one side.
That lower parking lot.
Yeah, like, so this
Oh,
is the
right here.
corner.
Right here.
Yes.
It's gonna be graded out. Graded, in lieu of the wall, the grading.
Okay, okay. So I didn't see that in the narrative. Okay. that makes sense. And then, the fence as well, does that stay?
One of the questions has to do with that I outlined and it is to look at the fence, should it be removed? Do they want to replace it?
Yeah,
To identify those.
okay, okay. Yeah.
Just
There were
give-
some parts of it that weren't in great shape.
Right.
So then the operations and maintenance plan, I was looking at it. I think that it's not clear to me. So it says, it has to be performed, the inspections have to be performed by a qualified individual. It's not clear to me which have to be performed by the homeowner and which, by the plan, and which have to be performed by the qualified individual, which I assume is not the homeowner. So if they could just get a little more
Okay,
clarity
clarification.
on a bunch of, a couple of these. And then, do they need to submit any of that to the town or just have it available?
The operations plan? We made
The
part of their,
inspections.
do they have to file reports?
Yeah,
I don't believe that they've outlined that they'll be filing reports.
okay. Like the ones that have to be completed by the PE, those don't need to be submitted, they're just kind of hold on.
I don't recall what it said in there, but we could clarify that. Filing of reports.
Okay.
Have there been any neighbors inquiring or inquiries of any sort?
None today.
Okay.
Have they been notified?
No.
It's pretty obvious if they walk by, something's happened though. The demolition sign is being torn, pieces are torn off, so.
No, I get that, but I just want to make
You're
sure,
right, you're right.
I don't want a neighbor coming back and,
Yep.
I didn't know,
Right.
come on,
I
you
didn't
guys,
get a chance to comment.
I would have liked to have had my 2 cents worth. So,
Yeah.
that's it.
So I have one question. So it's mentioned that there's a portion of the house where the southwestern roof can't reach the retention system, so that's coming down a leader, and then it's going to a splash pad, and then eventually it's going to end up in the brook or the water course. So it's, I think, 160 square feet. Not being an engineer, I'm not really sure if that's a big amount or a small amount.
Nothing.
It's
About
not
as big as this.
Okay, so that was one thing. But to Peter's point, that is a kind of a squishy area, and I mean, I know that, and I don't know if it's this water course or not, but I know that there have been issues with a water course in that general vicinity that has backed up and flooded people's yards. So I don't know if we're just adding however small amount it is to something that's already a problem. And then just in the conclusion, I just noted that they say that all of the roof is going to the retention system, and that's, it's just already been noted that there is a small portion that's going into the water course, so.
I guess what the engineer does is comes up and comments.
Right,
They'll address that. So,
that's all I have.
okay. Bill, you want to go last?
Just a minor one. If they end up redoing any of these schematics, they should probably put in the 50-foot review area.
Yep.
I'd like to see that and everything, even though it's gonna go right through the house and all that, but
Yeah.
it's just a standard we expect to have and be able to quickly look at.
Good point.
It is actually on site plan, it's well hidden up.
I missed it, sorry.
Yeah, 50 minutes wetland water course buffer line.
Okay.
It goes from like the garage and kind of shoots through the
Okay.
ground propane
Sorry.
tanks.
I take back my comment.
So there is a list of adjacent property owners, but it doesn't say whether they've been notified or not.
No, the application that's been uploaded to OpenView in the event that the boards, they make them get the 100 people and provide it, doesn't necessarily get used.
Okay.
All right. Commission members, public hearing, does this meet the criteria for a public hearing?
I think, whenever you're doing a whole new home construction, I just think it just has a public interest element to it. Might not be any neighbors that comment, but I would at least give them the opportunity, so I'm gonna lean that way.
I'm on the fence, so I'm not sure.
I'm on the fence, too.
Okay.
I was kind of leaning the other way.
Make up your mind.
Sorry.
Honestly, I was thinking of a public hearing, because it's in the public interest. I think the neighbors should formally know what's going on. There should be an advice that they should formally know, and, speak now, sort of thing.
I'll jump
And,
on board.
instead of having the application, instead of us approving something like that and saying, and then they have 15 days to object, et cetera, so it's like,
Right, right.
let's just get ahead of this. So I would say, okay, public hearing. Okay,
Can we, why don't we just vote on it?
okay. Peter,
Yeah.
can I have a motion? Thank
I'd
you.
like to make a motion to, for this to go to a public hearing. Any second?
Mr. Wright, thank you very much. All in favor? Okay, no. Okay.
And the reason being,
Public interest.
Next item of new business is EPC 20-2022, 21 Brookside Road, M. Marini and S. Kennedy, to install a recreational patio, walkway, and landscaping in a conservation easement and special flood hazard area, and within close proximity to the wetlands and watercourses. The property lies along the west side of Brookside Road, just north of the post road, and is identified as map number 16, lot number 66. The zone is R1/3 and is approximately 0.4634 acres. Rick?
Mr. Chairman, if you recall, maybe 3 or 4 months ago, the commission had considered an application very similar to this one on 25 Brookside. I'm sure most of you remember, very complicated subdivision development proposal, has a reach of the Goodwives River, wetlands, and as a result of the subdivision, the EPC permits that were issued, and the post-approval interaction through the court system, negotiated settlement, there was a conservation easement added as well. Actually, this parcel, which is right at the corner of Brookside Road and Boston Post Road, or the Post Road, is less constrained than the other parcel that we considered a few months ago. It's a little bit higher, it does have special flood hazard area, has all those other areas of restriction. And the issues will be generally the same. They are proposing to do a small patio along the south plane of the dwelling. Currently encroaches into the conservation easement some de minimis amount. It's in the floodplain. It's no direct impacts on wetlands or the water course. One of the things we started to generate a letter looking at alternatives to reduce the encroachments. We've asked for an evaluation of the planting elements that were applied at the time of subdivision. Looking at things such as invasive management, riverine hydraulics that will be looked at, drainage will be looked at. Hydraulics are probably not going to be an issue because it's at grade. They're not doing any permanent structures above grade. I mean, it shows a circle in the middle, but it'll be a very movable kind of fire pit kind of thing, and chairs that they can take inside during a time of flooding. And a landscaping mitigation plan has been provided, not only to improve the aesthetics, but also upgrade the conservation values of the property. So again, we're in the midst of generating a letter, looking forward to whatever comments you may have. And, and the presentation in the months to come.
Yeah, before the application reached me, I happened to pass by the property, and one of the things I do like that I'm seeing there is that Boston Post Road, there were oftentimes a lot of people that would dump garbage off, and they are, from my observation, taking good care of the property, which is a positive. Again, I think my concerns are the same as the neighboring property. This is a very, tight piece of property. It's right up against the Goodwives River. There's definitely going to be a lot of volume coming through that river. And I think the concerns, generally are the same ones that I know the homeowner is putting an investment here, but a couple of good storms and a lot of this would be just torn out. And then I do question, where does that go? It must go under the culvert under Boston Post Road. So, but we went through this before for the neighbor, and we might as well go through this again. I guess we have the application in front of us, but just put it out there. That's how I feel.
Carolyn?
So sort of piggybacking off of what Peter just said, my concern was whether the patio area is too close to the river, and if the river overflows and there's a beautiful little area there with chairs and a fire pit and so forth, if it's, unless they're somehow affixed to the ground, they're just going to get washed away. And again, my concern is stuff that gets washed in and creates flooding issues because it gets caught in the culverts and so forth. So I'm just wondering if there's any way to sort of anchor it to the property, and just whether there's any way to maybe move it a little bit further away. But I mean, I looked at the plans and
That's the thing we asked for is, alternatives, and they made it noted on there that it's like just enough room for like 4 chairs and a fire pit. And from what I understand, talking to the owner, the idea was to make it movable. You can be able to pick it up and put it in and store it inside the house.
yeah,
in the event of a flood.
so I mean, that would be, that would be something that we would probably have to make a condition that if we're expecting a big storm where it's expected that the volume of the river will be a problem, that their stuff is moved inside so it doesn't get carried away and create blockages.
Lauren?
I don't have any questions for them.
Bill?
I start off with there is still some debris on the other side of the river that's on their property line.
Thank you. Yep.
There's
Yeah.
a big old tire over there, and there's debris over near where the culvert is. So that could be pulled out, it's fine. So my biggest problem is not as much about what they're trying to do, but a way this conservation easement either is worded or is being handled, because it is not a conservation easement, and it is grass. As a matter of fact, one of these pictures showed a lot of stuff there, but it's now been all weed whacked. If you were down there, it's weed whacked, everything right down except for a couple of small little plants that were put through there, right down to the river. And that's all conservation easements. They probably get a tax break on it. So two things have got to happen. Either you take away part of that easement, in my mind, or you move to the correct spot where that should be natural, not just a lawn. I have a real problem with that. I know there's some litigation was involved with it, but us keep allowing that to happen is ridiculous.
I can't comment, I did talk to the homeowner about that.
Pardon?
I did talk to the homeowner about, they were uncovering the plantings in order to do the count. So, again, they did a number of shrub plantings
But it's
along the edge of the river.
basically grass.
Well, it's grass up to the fence, it's up to the fence.
I know, and then, I went through this last time to not, I just think it's just a sham, to tell you the truth, that we call that a conservation easement, when it's really nothing more than going right to the river, grass, as close as you can get, put a couple small little twig trees in there and make sure that it'll grow someday. I know that's not what we're talking about here, but I have a hard time approving something because of that whole situation, just like on the last
Well, I
one.
think we need to raise that with the homeowner.
Yep.
Okay, so we'll,
All right. Is there a
well, no,
chance-
I agree, because they were, the former owner was able to get 2 houses on that lot because they gave a conservation easement. Okay, if they hadn't given the conservation easement, they could not have done the subdivision. So, I agree with both. Across across the river, whenever I drive up Brookside, I look, the property to, is Wheeler Real Estate, I believe.
Yeah.
And they have a nice, they have a parking lot, et cetera, and post and rail fence. And then after that is, that is the property of this. And when we discussed this originally, when we were looking at this, it was my comment at the time that had to be cleaned up. Okay, you take down the fallen leaves, the branches, the tire, et cetera, because that would only create issues when, not if, there's gonna be a major storm. And so that was part of, my condition. I don't know if it got into the final conditions, but Rick, I want that as a condition when going forward, that gets cleaned up with the invasives, et cetera. So that, I think we'd take that. And then when they come forward, because we're just accepting this application now, the homeowner's advice the applicant's advice that we're gonna have this conversation on the conservation easement.
And it wasn't even noted in here, forget that easement situation, of any kind of barrier to prevent the same flow of fertilizers or anything off that small amount of lawn.
Yeah.
It's gonna go directly into the, so there wasn't even any recommendation to have a nice thick barrier of, not the little sprigs they pin in there, to
Yeah.
keep any of that from going on, Again, it's not a lot of lawn, but we're still talking about the same concept.
Yeah.
And I don't see any of that in here as
Yeah.
well, so. That's,
But we'll have the conversation. I think it's a good one.
thanks.
Okay. So I don't think that meets the criteria for a public hearing, but it'll be an interesting conversation. Moving on, EPC 21, 2022, 29 Brush Island Road, DCC Revocable Family Trust, to construct an elevated terrace pool house residential additions, in-ground propane tank and other related features within special flood hazard areas, 100 feet of Holly Pond. The property lies along the north side of the terminus of Brush Island Road, approximately 1,525 feet west of Nearwater Lane, and is identified as map number 56, lot number 15. The zone is R1, and it is approximately 0.850 acres. Rick?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Very interesting application. Historically, home was built in the early 2000s on a property that abuts Holly Pond. I don't know if you've been there, but it's coastal flood hazard area. There's tidal wetlands. There's some shorelands they're all coastal resources. The building was built as a elevated on piers structure.
We saw this one, Britt Breyer, I think I remember 29.
Yeah, I don't think that this one came to the
I gotta think about this
EPC.
one, but yeah.
It was elevated on piers to meet the V-zone construction standards. Subsequently, there was a proposal, and these all went to planning and zoning, where they modified the dwelling to put breakaway walls underneath to kind of hide what was underneath. There has another proposal that they constructed a grade level pool on the parcel. The property existed for some number of years, kind of fell a bit, it was transferred to a new owner. I think it was vacant for some period of time, but a new owner has bought into the property. They're doing improvements. One other fact that occurred in this whole process is that sometime during, I think it was 2013 or 2014, the flood zone changed and became less restricted, so it went from a V zone to an AE zone. So there's construction standards differed for the house. The applicant is coming back before the EPC and planning and zoning to do some additional work on the property, which consists of, in addition to the work that they're doing internally, that's substantially improving this dwelling again, but the grade level pool is expected to be demolished, and they want to raise up the pool on essentially a monolith to the level of the first floor. The first floor is like 8 feet above what is currently there. So raising this up, pool generally at a walkout from the dwelling, first floor, that they're going to do a pool house and other attendant facilities. Also, they will be upgrading the home per the request of staff and to meet the requirements for the A zone, to make it A zone compliant. So we have a flood zone compliant house. Staff is, at least at the Planning and Zoning, has initiated its review, has visited the site, has come up with some recommendations. I'm guessing that most of you have been there, have taken a look, have your own opinions on information that we need to add to that list. And again, looking forward to a presentation in September when they can digest that list and amend the plans accordingly.
Lauren, motion?
Can they do an in-ground propane tank there? Is that,
Yes.
okay,
So in-ground propane tanks in the flood zone, yes, you can.
okay.
There are standards for it. So it goes in there, they have to design it in such a way that, like a large, heavy concrete pad below ground, reinforced concrete, strapping, generally stainless steel, but it's engineered, designed by an engineer to withstand all the flood depths, pressures, velocities, impact, and uplift forces.
Okay.
So it is doable. There's a lot of them in town. And often that's a better way of going in a flood zone than having something that's above ground or is oil based. Is oil based. This is propane, and
Okay.
so you don't usually get the same kind of environmental impacts you would if you had a flood in a fuel oil tank.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, because everything else you would think is raised there. Okay. I'm looking forward to hearing more about it from the questions that were raised.
No questions, and look forward to hearing the presentation.
Kelly?
Just a quick one. There's a series of Coltex that are proposed, and I'm assuming that the purpose of them is to just kind of sort of slow down the flow of the water that's going into Holly Pond, but it also mentions treating the water.
Mhm.
I thought that I read in one of the other applications that rooftop water does not need to be treated. So I'm just wondering, what's the purpose of this?
That's a matter, that's a matter of opinion.
Okay.
I mean, I think that there is not sediment, but there is debris that falls on the rooftop. You don't forget any particulates in the air, and that comes down in the rainfall are there. So
And it's also probably the pool area as well.
yeah, so they are reviewing the proposal. They're developing a drainage scheme. It's less for drainage impact because you have the
Yeah.
infinite amount of storage of Long
Right.
Island Sound and the Atlantic Ocean. It's imperceptible whatever an impact would be from a volume standard. Water quality standards, you look when you're in a flooded space along the edge of court, they put these in there for more so treatment of water quality. Think about pollution, what comes from a roof. Heat is the big one.
Yeah,
So your
right, yeah.
heated stormwater,
Yeah.
if you put it in the ground, it cools it.
It cools it, right,
It filters
okay.
it, and if you construct them correctly, you're also filtering out, you're relying on the ability of the soil to naturally filter out contaminants, but if you prepare your structures correctly, you're also putting them in spaces where you can go actually physically collect it out.
I mean, but in this case, it's not really it's not really going into the ground below. It's just kind of a holding tank. And
No,
then oh, it is?
It's infiltrating into
Oh, it
the
is,
ground.
okay.
So, I mean, we talked about it before, when you have infiltration in the flood zone, it's gonna work in the lesser storms. It's not gonna work very well in the 100-year
Right,
storm.
right, yeah.
But that's expected.
Yeah,
You know, that's
okay.
expected anyway.
Well, it's actually, you know, I found it curious on the 2 hurricanes that we did have. The flooding was all inside Darien, not on the waterfront. The waterfront, the water just flowed out and went into the infinite sink of Long Island Sound. Okay, they didn't, you know, there was minor stuff there, but it didn't, it was all Stony Brook and
Yeah.
upstream.
Near the rivers, right.
Upstream, but because once it got to the shore, it just flows out. And so, all right,
Yeah.
I'll be interested to see this presentation in September.
Just one other question. So the raised structure that the pool is on in the patio area, what's on, it's like, it looks sort of like stone or brick or something?
I think it will be stone, and then they're gonna modify that lower level to meet the V-zone standards. So they'll have, the A-zone standards, which involve wall openings, eliminating the hydrostatic pressures, allowing it to flood.
So there's nothing under there?
No,
It's-
under the current house.
No,
there's
but I
nothing
mean,
underneath
under the proposed, structure that will have the pool and the patio area?
It may be, I seen.
I think it's blow through.
I think it has flood vents in it.
Okay.
So they're gonna be building it up, and then it's gonna be, reinforced concrete on the.
Okay.
and steel.
But it's not like solid underneath, it's open?
I don't
We don't
remember
know,
all the
okay.
portions, I can't recall
I was
at the
just
moment.
curious.
Yeah.
That was
But we'll see
interesting.
the details, very detailed
Yes.
plans, because they'll have to
Good.
meet the A-zone standard.
Can I have a few comments here?
Well, I know you don't like to go first, Bill, so.
Oh, you want to go next?
No, go ahead.
Is everybody gone?
Yeah,
Yep.
Okay. Do you know if they're counting all this decking as part of their coverage? Because they've gone from 16 to 20%. It seems like a whole lot more than just 5 more percent. I mean, I would think that should be covered, and it's, no planning or development guy would ever make that mistake, but it seems to me that is a huge amount in red, and the coverage is still at 20%. So anyway, it's not our purview, but it makes me wonder, because it's a monster piece, and that should be counted. It's connected to the
well,
house.
they
But
have
is
a
that-
pool now.
But is this
though.
coverage for?
Coverage for the land development of the acreage.
So you're talking about,
It's not our deal,
That's-
but
yeah.
I just wonder, because they have a pool now, but
Yeah,
none of
there's
it
all
none of
that.
it was connected
Right,
like that.
yeah, yeah.
And that's a lot, this is the scale, that's
Yeah.
a whole lot of red. All right, so that was one of my pieces.
I thought the same thing.
The other part is that they should continue having some kind of a berm, that planting berm again, saltwater or freshwater, doesn't matter. So maybe their runoff goes down, can get caught before it goes into Holly Pond. I'm a big Holly Pond guy because I kayak up there every day. And this house is interesting to me because it is the largest, most spacious, I'll be nice here, without any kind of interruption with anything. It's just a very, very large building based on all the other houses in Holly Pond. So there's 3 things that I'd like them to consider, none of which we probably can push any of it. It is the only street in all of Holly Pond that doesn't have sewer systems. And it's only a half a mile away from the sewer hookup, right? But it's a private road, and here's a perfect example, very simple, there's no ledge, and we're allowing, this to be done less than 80 feet from Holly Pond, a septic system. It's ridiculous. Every other street in the entire Holly Pond is on town sewers. So that's my one problem with the whole thing, not that we can have much to do that. Number 2 is that we need to start thinking about, because it's such a monstrous, large, enormous house, if they have lighting that starts projecting out into Holly Pond, there's a lot of groups that are worried about dark sky and all those kind of things. We're not there yet, but we should have this programmed again with planning and zoning. It's not our deal, although we should, it's environmental. That we have down lighting only and not a huge, it'll look like a monster ship in the night if they have everything pointing out to us and not down lighting. I don't know if we can have any push on that. And the third is, it would be great to have some large trees put in to break up some of this condo-looking style. I mean, it's from the water, it's very obtrusive to a shoreline. There are a few other houses that don't have trees in front of them. They look bad, but this one is so much larger It would be great. Do we have any control to do that? Probably not, but it would be nice to have a couple of big
Within our
trees,
purview,
break that up.
within our purview, we certainly.
Okay, because
can
it's
talk
from
about
our, you know, we don't normally look from the water in at the coastlines, but we're definitely doing that over at Great Island now. That's a big thought. Everybody's thinking about, what's that gonna look like with
Yep.
the water in? Well, we could start in other places if we can to try to have consideration to doing something like that. That's my piece. Thanks.
Anybody else? Okay, starting with old business, EPC 05-2022, 141 West Avenue, D. Lezhnowinski, to demolish an existing detached garage, construct parking, grade, put my glasses on. Parking, grade, and conducted other related activities within close proximity to wetlands and watercourses, Stony Brook. The work is in association with a proposal to partially demolish and then raise and floodproof an existing single-family dwelling and associated features. The property lies along the south side of West Avenue, approximately 335 feet east of Old Parish Road, and is identified as map number 39, lot number 103. The zone is R1/3, and this property is approximately 0.1702 acres. It's non-conforming. Rick?
Mr. Chairman, extensive testimony was heard, at least on 2 occasions over the past few months about this application. Staff was directed to prepare a resolution for the board's consideration. If you recall, existing house, they're spending a lot of time and energy to raise and reconstruct the house to make it flood compliant. One of the few flood compliant houses on the street. They did a very good job with their engineering and other design professionals, making sure it hit all the tick marks in terms of flood compliance, from the outside features such as the condenser units to the grades around the house and the elevation of the crawl space. They also did drainage impact analysis. They demonstrated. They did water quality analysis. They did landscape and other enhancements along the edge of Stony Brook as it goes through the property. So they seem to have hit all the buttons. So at your request, I developed the resolution, and would be subject to discussion. And if it's endorsed, we'll transmit it to them to move forward with the project.
Commission members, any questions or comments? Laura, anything?
No, not at the moment.
No? Okay. So we want to vote to approve the draft? Rick?
Sure.
Peter?
I'd make a motion to accept the draft permit as presented to us, EPC 05202 at 141 West Avenue.
I'll second.
Second, thank you. All in favor? Thank you. Next piece of old business is EPC 11-2022, 43 Birch Road, C. FAR, to construct residential additions, a detached garage, relocated drive, drainage, and other related features proximate to wetlands and watercourses. The property lies along the west side of Birch Road, approximately 235 feet north of Pointer Woods Road, and is identified as map number 11, lot number 9. The zone is R1, and it is approximately 1.233 acres. Rick?
Mr. Chairman, if you recall, testimony was provided over a month or two previously. The applicant is proposing to do a certain number of residential additions on the property, including the detached garage, some structural improvements to the existing dwelling, also relocating the sanitary sewer, doing improvements to the driveway, adding drainage to mitigate drainage and water quality impacts, and had developed a mitigation proposal that along the lines of a manager proposal. All the other things too that you would typically see. They did some tree protection for trees they intended to save, sediment and erosion controls. Infiltration is a big part of this, to infiltrate water or to discharge water through a leak-off over an extensive flow path down to the river. If you recall, some of the comments from the commission at the last meeting related to the ability to protect some of the trees of size on the property, the assurances that not only is the drainage designed and endorsed by DPW, but also they were looking at certain areas or brought to the attention of the engineer to ensure there wouldn't be any additional erosion on the parcel. And also, again, the value of the mitigation. So, Accord Engineering, Harry Rookville is here this evening. An individual from William Kenny Associates is here this evening as well. If you have any questions for them, but my summary of the issues pertinent to this application have been outlined in this agenda summary report dated July 27th. I'm available to answer questions.
Yes, thank you, Rick. Harry Roachville, McCord Engineering, professional engineer. I'll briefly just go through the comments that we've received over the past couple months since we originally presented back in June and how we addressed those comments. I'll first start with comments from EPC that were received on a letter dated June 1st. The first comment was in regards to the upland review area. We did identify that this watercourse is part of Tokenique Brook, so we increased the upland review area from 50 feet to 100 feet, as shown with the yellow line here. Another comment from the commission and from Rick in his letter was to locate sizable trees of significance. The surveyors went back out to the property, and all trees are now shown on the plan. We are saving 3 trees as part of this project. 1, 2, and 3 here. There's also a significant number of trees that weren't large enough for the surveyors to locate that are also being saved in this heavily vegetated area through here, as well as behind the existing patio here, which is all to remain as is. Another comment from Rick in the letter was to fully depict the grading necessary west of the dwelling. As I just mentioned, these patios are to stay here and here, so a lot of this grading, well, there is really no grading in this area, so it's designed to stay at existing grade with just some minor tweaks for some landscaping steps that are being relocated to facilitate access to the new addition. We also added some spot elevations and a boulder wall here to mitigate the amount of fill that we required for these landscaping steps to get down from the new addition to the existing patio. Another comment was to address DPW comments. I'll get to those in a minute. Next comment was in regards to the erosion and sedimentation controls. Previously, we only had silt fence enveloping the area of construction. We've added hay bales to provide a double barrier in closest proximity to the watercourse shown here. We also added a silt sack in our proposed driveway drain shown there. And the last comment was in regards to providing a mitigation and enhancement plan for the wetlands. As Rick mentioned, we did provide one provided by William Kenny's office, and Caroline's here if you have any questions for her on that later. The next round of comments was from Darren Ostafine at DPW. We also addressed all of those comments. First pertinent comment that regarded a response was in regards to the sewer lateral. We did some more field investigation and obtained some more as-built mapping from the town. We can now accurately show the sewer lateral and show that it's 10 feet off of the existing water line. So that satisfies Darren's comment there, whereas before they were a little closer than 10 feet. We didn't know exactly where they were. Another comment was in regards to providing a percolation test in the area of the detention system. Previously, we didn't think one was necessary because it was all sand and bank run gravel, but we did go back out and confirm 1-in-10 perk rates for some fast draining soils in that area. Next comment was in regards to the roof leaders and discharging them to the driveway drain for pre-treatment prior to the detention system. We were able to confirm that all proposed roof leaders that were previously routed to the detention system can all be gravity fed into the driveway drain for pre-treatment prior to the detention system. So that is now shown on our drawings as well. And then the last comment in regards to the stormwater plan is in regards to the overflow. Previously, we had a point discharge here with a riprap outlet. We've changed that to a level spreader to promote sheet flow to the wetlands that'll filter through that heavily vegetated area or buffer that I previously mentioned. Further comments that we addressed that were provided at the June meeting was in regards to providing a second stockpile area on the southern portion of the property. So one is now shown down here, so there are 2 stockpile areas on either side of the driveway. Another comment from the commissioners was that they thought there could be a better propane tank location, and we agreed with that. It is now shown on the north side of the driveway with a much shorter run to the generator behind the addition. That essentially answers all the comments that we had over the last few months from the first meeting and rounds of comments from town staff. I'd be happy to answer any questions, and Caroline from Bill Kenny's office would be as well if you have any questions on her mitigation plan. I don't know if you wanted to do a quick summary as well.
Would you mind?
Sure.
Thank you.
My name is Carolyn Matthews, William Kenny Associates. I'm an ecologist and arborist, and I've appeared before you virtually throughout the pandemic. This is my first time in person, so I'm pleased to be here.
Welcome.
Bill had a conflict tonight, so unfortunately he couldn't make it. Just to go through this relatively briefly, you're aware of the existing conditions. There's a water course that flows from north to south through the western portion of the property. The water course flows through a relatively healthy woodland that's primarily composed of native vegetation. There's a dense canopy with mature red maples and American beeches, and the understory is also primarily younger tree vegetation, sweet birch, hop hornbeam, various other trees. There are a few invasive plants throughout the understory, primarily burning bush. There's also some Japanese barberry and some stiltgrass that's throughout the buffer and the woodland itself. But if you look at the photos here, we tried to highlight that there is a pretty dense buffer right along the water course that's, again, mostly native vegetation, ferns, clethra, there's some trees, and on the eastern side of the water course where the proposed developments are, there's this existing buffer that is here, and I'm sure it's hard for you guys to see, but there's some trees here that are actually not shown on the survey that will maintain a buffer from about 20 to 30 feet between the water course and the proposed improvements right off the patio that's existing, that's not going to be modified. So to keep that buffer that's healthy and providing wetland benefits intact, what we proposed is selectively removing some invasive vegetation periodically and replanting it periodically to help not disturb that maintained buffer and slowly make it better over time. So I'm happy to answer any questions you guys might have or take it back over to Harry.
Anybody, commission members, anybody have questions or comments? Thank you for your presentation.
Sure.
Harry? Peter, any questions or comments for Harry? No? Lauren?
How frequently do they have to pull the invasives, and how is that tracked?
Sure. So what we've specified is 6 to 12, once in the spring, once in the fall, and on a yearly basis. Tracking, we can provide a management plan, so that is tracked. Happy to provide that. But it's so minor in the quantity that's out there. It's more as an as-needed basis, and can provide that if requested.
Well, I mean, I think if we're going to say we're going to do it and we're going to put it in the plan, then there should be some way to hold them accountable.
Sure.
Just kind of thinking. out loud, but okay, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anything else? Peter?
No.
Bill, no? Okay, I'm all set too. Thank you.
Very good.
Rick?
So the, only one thing for the management, would it be, or in terms of the management plan, would it be prudent, I mean, we're talking about future managing of the vegetation, and I understand that accountability portion. As part of this, prior to the completion of this project, should there be a good first time culling of the invasives under the supervision of the environmental professional to get it off on a good start, knowing that, again, the homeowner's gonna be responsible for doing some management in the future and and I think part of this was there's recommendations for planting as well in the future. But I just wanted to be clear, is included in any resolution drafted in advance of the next meeting, do you want to include that the first cut, the first culling of that vegetation completed prior to the issuance of a CO?
And also replacing them with natives at the same time?
But I think that's going to be part of the judgment of the environmental professional.
I think so.
Yeah.
You know, I think there's I think that's an excellent, so.
I'm just curious on the non-natives, the barberries, et cetera. Were they planted or they just developed naturally with seedlings, et cetera? Is there an indication on the property how they got there?
Yeah, for this specific property, there might have been some ornamental plantings,
Yeah.
mostly on the eastern side. On the
Yeah.
western side, it appears to be volunteer vegetation
Yeah.
that has just come up over time. But because it is so shaded, it's relatively well controlled, and it's not, other forests you can look at and just see it's all burning bush throughout the understory. That's not the circumstance here.
Yeah, I think, Rick, your point's a good one. It's really education. I mean, you go to Home Depot, they'll gladly sell barberry bushes,
Yeah.
and, it just, homeowners are just not aware that, some of these non-native plantings are, pretty insidious.
Okay. Anything else, Rick?
No, so just, if you're going to direct me to do a
Yes.
resolution in advance of the next
Yes,
meeting?
so directed. Okay.
Well, excuse me, I think we're up against the statutory time limit, aren't we, Rick, on this one? We missed the meeting in the middle.
You missed the meeting in the middle, there's no implication for it. You could also author a letter, just recommend the extra 35 days or 65 days. But there's no implication, we have to draft the resolution for the next meeting.
Okay then. Do you know the date that it runs out?
I don't,
All right.
What are you thinking?
Well, I thought that we addressed all the comments. I was expecting a vote on an approval draft resolution tonight, since we started in 60 days ago and weren't allowed to speak at the second meeting in the middle.
Personally, I like to see the drafts written in front of me. Is there an issue, is there a timing issue here, or obviously, are you under the gun for something here? Harry, I don't, I understand that there's a statutory thing here, but is there pressure to get started? I'm missing something.
No, just that, these typically don't last 3 months in our experience. We assume that, honestly, I don't think we've ever granted an extension. So I was just curious, I just assumed that would be the case tonight.
If there was a health and safety issue, I might, something like that. We've done it once with a driveway that got washed out. And so, the owner literally couldn't get to his property without, jumping a stream. That I can see. Rick, what's your?
we have to draft the resolution and have the conditions of an approval for the next meeting. There's no implication, no automatic approval. They could author a letter to say, give you the 65 days, but there's no implication for the extra time. And the second missing of the meeting was not the EPC's issue. Things had, were not submitted in a timely fashion.
Interesting. Sir, you were going to speak?
Well,
Sir, please go up to the microphone so we can hear you. Identify yourself and your address, and then we can.
yes, excuse me. For the record, I'm Neil Hauk. I'm the architect on the project from Neil Hauk Architects here in town. The homeowner has been very cooperative. They would really like to get going with, construction drawings on this because they've moved out of the house. They just had a new child, and they'd like to get the house, underway as soon as possible. When I read the staff review, it looked like there weren't really any objections and that we had addressed everything that we were asked to address. So if there's any way you could vote on it this evening, I think, that the homeowner would appreciate that.
There are no conditions of approval written for you to consider, so they wait 3 weeks until the next meeting, and they'll have a resolution written.
All right, is there anybody, commission members, that feel Peter, you're the...
Well, I think I'd like to see it in writing. I think, there could be, just trying to strike something here, but there could be a vote of indication, subject to the documentation, which would be voted on at the next meeting, if that suffices from your point of view.
I think the homeowners would be very appreciative of that. Just sort of an indication that things are going to be approved and that we can move forward. So.
Any commission member feel strongly one way or the other? Rick, any objection to a vote of indication or no?
I would not do that, so prejudge it.
Prejudging?
Yeah.
You're going to see a resolution with the conditions of approval
Mm-hmm.
written, and it's up to the commission to sort through those and say, the findings are accurate and the conditions.
What is interesting is that they hadn't submitted the information requested on time for the prior meeting.
For the second meeting, yes.
For the second meeting. So if it was on us, that's one thing. It's on them for that one. So, I think there's a good sense of the meeting here, without doing votes or anything like that it's it'll most probably be approved. Okay. That said, it's pending Rick writing the draft resolution and then the collective review of the commission. So I think that's where we're going to leave it tonight. Okay.
Thank you.
But thank you for your input. Okay. We have EPC 12-2022, 373 Brookside Road, Key Blackwell, to construct an in-ground pool patio, supplement patio equipment and fence reconstructed garage, and implement other related activities proximate to the wetlands and watercourses, Mathers Pond. The property lies along the west side of Brookside Road, approximately 715 feet south of Stephen Mather Road, and is identified as map number 1, lot number 108. The zone is R2, and it is approximately 6.379 acres. Mr. DeVesta. Rick?
Well, I'll just give you a brief,
All right,
in
sorry.
the prior months, that there's been a presentation of the circumstances of the application. I know many of you have been to the site. The property is a large property. It has wooded wetlands. It has a wetland fringe along a large portion of Mather Pond. They are proposing a in-ground pool, retaining wall, grading, terrace space, mitigating drainage structures on a portion of the property that's currently maintained as lawn. It falls within the 50-foot setback to wetlands and water course, wetlands and water courses, 100 feet to Mather's Pond. And the applicant, as you may recall, and I'm going to, just for familiarity, is they did a drainage analysis. They demonstrated no adverse impact on drainage of property. They're going to be installing infiltrators. They have made an attempt to limit the spread of the pool and terrace area with low profile retaining walls. They have shown in detail how they're accessing the space. They're actually tearing down a portion of the building, the garage. Going to build a pool, work their way out, reconstruct the garage with a very de minimis increase in the size of that garage. And probably the most important, where everybody was involved in their inspections of the property, is what are they doing on the site to mitigate impacts or improve the conservation values of the property. And they spent time with a plan, created a plan of managing some of the vegetation along the edge of the pond that is either in dead or in decline, managing invasives, came up with a re-landscaping plan to displace some of the lawn. There were some areas that were more lawn than other to the edge of the pond. Other portions of it were, naturally vegetated. They made provisions on the plan to protect trees of size that were in the development or approximate to the development envelope. They also went at the request of the commission on certain areas of the property to go in and clean up debris that had been accumulated. They've also established a code compliant area with the health department. So staff has summarized the findings of the application in this agenda summary report dated July 26th. And I'm available for questions, and Mr. DeVesta, and I see Mr. Pop is here too, to answer questions if you have any as well.
Further questions?
Carolyn?
I don't have any further questions.
Laura? Okay.
None.
None? No, I think it's nice. I'd agree. So you'll write this up then for approval next time?
Yes, one of the questions, well, based on last conversation you just had with the previous application there, our statutory time frame is up as well. Tomorrow's our 65th day.
Okay.
So based on the comments I got from Rick dated June 6th, the letter to me, the receipt was down June 1st, and it basically says the date of receipt marks the start of the statutory time clock in which a decision shall be made, or shall be rendered. So basically, we're running out of time as well for this application.
It'll be the same thing, there's no implication for running over. You should, keeping track, and you could have done, you can do an extension, but there's no implication for this commission should they not render a decision tomorrow. So you have an additional 3 weeks before the next time.
Right. But again, I'm just making a point that statutory clock is running out, and we didn't have a meeting in July. We had provided all the information that was requested at the July 6th meeting for my other application. I had got comments from Rick, which responded to that. So we responded to all the comments within a timely manner, I believe. So, but just wanted to bring that to a point that saying that statutory time frame is out tomorrow. But
Yep.
so we can provide a 35-day extension.
I don't think there's an issue, and I think you have an excellent sense of what the commission
Right.
feels and
Sure.
and what's going to go on there. So
Yeah,
I don't think that's an issue
Yeah.
from your
was all,
perspective. So yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you,
Very
Doug.
good. Thank you.
Thank you. And moving on, we have the approval of minutes for the regular meeting of July 6, 2022. Everybody should have gotten that. The commission members have a draft. Everybody have a chance to look at it, provide their questions and comments to Rick?
Yep.
Yep. Okay, good. With that, Peter, can I have a motion to
I'd like to
approve?
make a motion to accept the minutes for the regular meeting of July 6, 2022, sorry.
Carolyn?
Second?
Second, all in favor? Thank you very much. Agent approvals, EPC 13-2022, 4 Linda Lane, T. Carruthers, to construct a pool privacy fence and install landscaping proximate to wetlands. The property lies along the east side of Linda Lane, just south of Hanson Road, and is identified as map number 9, lot number 92. The zone is R2, and it is approximately 1.01 acres.
Mr. Chairman, staff is prepared to issue agent approvals for this particular application. There was some minor presentation at one of the prior applications. Staff believes it's a minor application involving a perimeter fence around a pool that falls within regulated areas that only as the result of there being wetlands on the adjoining property. And there had been some de minimis kind of site disturbance, though there is site disturbance on the entire property, in this portion of the regulated area just extends up, and they've come back with a very extensive re-landscaping plan. So in combination of the minor nature of the fence, they've done things like raised it up 3 inches or so to allow for the migration of small animals and not
The
to.
Bill Wright critter path.
Bill Wright critter path. And something to be known for. And also not to impede drainage. So staff is prepared to issue an agent approval for this application with those conditions that are outlined in the draft report. And there's no vote that's really necessary.
No, just if there's any questions or comments? No?
I just have one, just a comment. I mean, I think it's good that they included some native plantings, and they do have an extensive planting plan, as you said, and some of them are natives, but most of them are not. I just always prefer to see native plants.
Can you change that?
I think it's a balancing act. Of course, they want to have, ornamental
Some
landscaping
ornamental.
plans, and don't forget, the planting plan extends outside of regulated areas as well.
Yeah,
They took that whole swath, so there is
okay.
planting in there, and they've extended around. I've always been of the position is we're relying on these landscaping professionals to come up with something. We put it in, they plant it in their head that overwhelmingly should be native planting.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think it's somewhat fair, given the fact that not all the whole properties in regulated areas, they can
Yeah.
certainly do, plantings that are.
Well,
gonna-
within our area, we can,
Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
within our,
Just,
no, this was, and I'm sure Bill remembers this, this was a house where the wetlands were off-site, but part of the house was the upland review area was on this property. And somebody come in and basically said there was no wetlands there, and all of a sudden you had to go, oops,
okay,
and the guy came back, and so we made them do an extensive planting plan with details, et cetera, et cetera. So,
okay.
so that was 4 Linda Lane. All right, we'll move on. The next one is EPC 14-2022, 64 Andrews Drive, A. Teodoro, to expand and reconstruct a recreational deck and fence proximate to wetlands. The property lies along the east side of Andrews Drive, just north of Red Coat Pass, and is identified as map number 64, lot number 113, zone is R1, and it's approximately 1.75 acres.
again, a potential agent approval. Staff has drafted the agent approval. It's for and based on our past presentation, and I'm sure all of us have been to this site, very unique site, very essentially on top of a hill, a very distinct dropping grade, high retaining wall or grade change before the little area of wetland along a portion of Andrews Drive. There is currently a narrow deck that's there. They are adding a couple feet of width to the deck, and they're also doing a safety fence along the top of this very precipitous grade change and drop into the wetland. Staff, of course, believes it's a minor activity. They've agreed to, although they haven't modified their plan, they've agreed to, and I put it as a condition of approval, to have the Bill Wright migratory pathway that would be, and again, not to impede
You lost
drainage. And not to impede drainage. And so it should be relatively few impacts. We've asked for them to stabilize the area under the elevated deck as well. So, again, the agent approval draft letter is here, August 4th. No vote is necessary, but if anybody has any questions or issues, concerns, or whatever.
Nope. Okay, good. There's no other business? Peter, can I have a motion to adjourn?
Sure. Motion to adjourn the Wednesday, August 3rd, 2022 regular meeting of the Environmental Protection Commission.
Second?
Okay. All in favor? Thank you. We're off.